All right, guys, we are thrilled to have Mark and Sarah with us from Johnson Ferry. Many of you probably know them. To talk with us about student choirs. Come on in, come on in. All right, anyway, lock anybody out. Thanks for being at the conference. Thanks for the time you've taken these last couple days to be here, and excited about what y'all are going to share with us.
So are we up?
You're up.
So I'm the old guy, so I get to go first. My name is Mark, and I did used to share a last name with Sarah until she had to get married. She's Sarah Blackstone now. But I've been at Johnson Ferry for 34 years, and Sarah has been there on our team, does a great job as a worship leader. Just was recently promoted to ministerial staff, so God's using her in a special way. We are a multi-headed animal at Johnson Ferry in that we do, how do you say that? We have traditional services and modern services, and we all like one another. It's not a competitive type thing. And Sarah is probably one of the only people that fits legitimately in both venues very well. She can go and lead in the modern service, turn right around and come over and lead praise the Lord. All good. How long does this go, Robert? Till
An hour.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of the front man here, and I want Sarah to get into the nuts and bolts here. But the student music thing has been a really, obviously I've been there a long time. The churches, I've seen a lot of change through the years. And, but really student music and children's music have been a real priority for me the whole time I've been there. I did not inherit a wonderful program with lots of great history and all.
I did.
Yeah, and I would say this too, is what we hope to accomplish here. I can tell you a lot about what works at our address. I can't really say, man, this is going to work first thing to Prattville. You know, but if you can take and steal some ideas and go back and be so creative, that would be great. So, but I don't know. I'm sorry, there's a fee to enter now. Especially if your last name starts with an E.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's Jackie.
Okay, thank you.
Scott is Jackie.
Oh, that's awesome.
The LJ first
Good to see you guys.
That's great.
Anyway, when my wife and I came to Johnson Ferry 34 years ago, we'd been at a good church out in Texas, at Huntersville Baptist, good youth choir thing, and so I came in and thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to be the hero. And, you know, I'll never forget, it was October of 1987. And come and meet the new minister of music this afternoon. I'm like, great, you know, student choir. It's going to be awesome. And so we met, and there were 14 kids there, and 8 of them were seniors. So I was like, okay, yeah. But I did see this cute little alto right there in the front row, and she had a big hair and was a cheerleader, 10th grader, and like, I'm going to build it around her. And we did. And now her daughter is in Sarah's high school choir all these years later. So anyway, again, children's music, student choirs have always been a real priority for me. I led the student choirs myself. The high school choir for the first 13 years I was there at the church. My wife Rebecca led the middle school choir. She inherited like nothing. She had several rehearsals with like 8 kids. A lot of potential there, but again, there's lots of potential in lots of places where you just got to prioritize it. We did, for sure. Our high school choir team meets on Sunday afternoons, 9th through 12th grade, middle school choir 6th through 8th, Wednesdays. Both of those teams plug into other ministries. The partnership with student ministry in general has been a real good thing, and a priority also, for sure. So I'm going to stop for just a second and just pray for us, and also just ask that God will use Sarah. She kind of gets into the nuts and bolts of who we are and why we are. So let's do that. Lord, thank you for today. I pray that you guide us as we talk about one of my favorite things at Johnson Ferry, and that's student choirs. Love working with kids, being a part of what you're doing at that address. And just pray that we can be helpful to these men and women in any way possible. In Jesus' name. So I'm gonna pass the baton over to my left. Sarah, talk to us about how it works with you.
Yeah, and I will say I did inherit a great program, and so I have not built this thing from the ground up. We've had some really great guys come before me and do a lot of great things with student choir, and I was thankful to be able to kind of jump in and have changed some things over the last 8 years, but a lot of the nuts and bolts of who we are has just been established for years and years, just because it's a priority of Mark's, and it's a priority of, it always has been of our pastor, to invest in the next generation, whether it was musical kids through student choir, or if it was just the general, student ministry at Johnson Ferry. I do have a presentation up here, mostly just because I think it's more fun to get to look at stuff instead of just hearing us talk about it. So a lot of these things y'all may already know, or already have this going on at your church, but this is just kind of the foundation of who we are. We do have a 6th through 8th grade choir is our middle school, and then 9th through 12th is our high school choir. The middle school choir meets on Wednesday nights because that works with the programming for middle school ministry. They also meet on Wednesday nights right afterwards, and high school choir is the same. They meet on Sunday afternoons right before they go to student ministry activities at 6. And so they both meet in the choir rehearsal room and jump in there. It's a classic rehearsal setup with a piano player over there. I depend a lot on my iPad and playing kind of through the originals of the songs to get the students kind of an idea of where we're going. That usually gets them a little more energetic, and then also have a accompanist over to the side to work on specific parts as we get to that. So in terms of just kind of the thing that I learned the most quickly when I came in at Johnson Ferry was that it was not about just picking the right music, especially when you're working with students. It's so much about relationships. And so in terms of rehearsal environment, when we meet with our team, the new music doesn't solve a problem. It doesn't attract the students. It's more about, again, just getting to know the students. If Sunday afternoon at 4:30 is the only time I ever saw students, it would not be successful. So I try to be present as much as I can with student ministry events. I try to go to football games and all of that and try new things, changing up the playlist of music when they're coming in, just making it an accessible environment where they feel comfortable, because ultimately, we aren't the school choir, we're the church choir, and they don't have to come. So we want them to want to come. And a lot of that starts with leadership. We have a foundation of adult leaders that comes on Sunday afternoon and also comes on our mission trip that we do for both the middle school choir and the high school choir. They are a huge part of our success, because ultimately I can't talk to every single student every single week. I try to, but I try to get adults that are already volunteering within our student ministry so the students know them. The more young adults I can get, the better, because our students tend to more quickly respond to them. So if it's a college student who feels called to ministry and is trying to find a place, because specifically where we are located in Marietta, we don't have a super strong college ministry. It's just not super large. Our students go out. So this is a great way for the college students to plug in and feel connected to our church and to serve.
Yeah, really, you can see the word chaperone's not on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a partner with you, a leader team, rather than I'm coming to be a boss.
Absolutely, yeah. And they rotate through, coming on Sunday afternoons. I encourage them, please don't sit in the corner. If you can go sit in the middle of the altos, I don't care if you can't sing, but at least you're there. At least you're there with them and they feel connected to you. Now, I also lean a lot on our students. Students, at least in our context, are always dying for some sort of ownership. They want the leadership, they want the responsibility, and there's so much more bought in and inviting their friends if they have some buy-in to the planning and the creativity, and have an open door with me to come by and say, hey, I heard this new song, or hey, what if we tried this game in rehearsal, or hey, I think it might be effective. You could get this group of people if you planned a dodgeball a night for the guys, and did a little music and a lot of dodgeball. They come up with great ideas. They're great brainstormers. This is my leadership team a couple of years ago, just doing a little Christmas gathering, but it doesn't seem to take much for them to feel connected in that way when they have that sort of buy-in. They also are great. Our student leadership team within the high school are great at serving our middle schoolers. And so if I'm having trouble, Wednesday nights at probably all of our churches is busy, and it's harder to find volunteers because they're strapped for a children's choir or for Wednesday night Bible study. So I'll pull in some of my high schoolers and ask them to come and serve with the middle school because they know what I'm doing and they can pass out the music, and middle schoolers respond sometimes better to them telling them to be quiet than to me. So use our high schoolers in that way a lot. In terms of, like I said, just getting to know students, I try to be present as much as I can. I can't be all places at once, but if I can go to a student's recital or a musical theater event, it's also a great way for me to get to know other students that are involved in the musical programs in the community, and hopefully say, hey, like, you did great at this, that role in that play. I'd love for you to come check out choir. It's a great recruiting tactic there. But also just is, just able to be present with them. They feel connected with you, and helps you know what's going on in their life.
Really, Sarah has the same degree I got from Sanford, music degree. But then straight out of college, she worked in the admissions office as the regional recruiter in Nashville. And so for 3 years, she was winning kids for Sanford over and over, and really sharpening her PR skills, if you will, and how to relate to kids and all. Not to say you couldn't. No, to have her apply that same skill, hey, let's meet at Starbucks and all of a sudden they're devoted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say too, if y'all have questions, or I'd rather this be more conversational, so y'all chime in whenever, and Cardi, you've got so much, chime in whenever if you've got stuff that's worked for y'all too. Yeah.
I'll ask you a question right
Yeah,
now
great.
based on it, okay?
Yeah.
What if you're serving with a team where the student minister is not supportive of having a youth choir?
Yeah. So I actually have had experience with this. It wouldn't necessarily have been apparent to the entire church, but internally I knew that they were not super supportive of me. And so that was when I really just tried to be as supportive of them as possible, because ultimately I loved what they were doing with our students, and our students responded well to those individuals as well. So I tried to just be around to show that I was really bought in with the overall student experience at the church, and not just my specific ministry. I wanted to see students succeed, whether it was in choir or not. And it was helpful, I think, in the support that I showed them. There was a little bit more interest in what we were doing as well. But I also eventually just had to have a sit down with one of our pastors a couple of years ago. And again, it was very civil. We both were friends. It was just, he was kind of on his own thing and I was with mine. And was really, really honest about, I don't feel super supported, but I really think that this would be beneficial in the long run to your ministry. I would love to help filter in some of these students to help lead worship with your ministry for these special events. And it grew over time.
She did that without the dad, too.
Yeah.
I didn't even know until afterwards.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a challenge, but I think the more camaraderie that I was able to get in the honesty and that sort of conversation, it helped me in the long run. So.
And then follow-up question for Mark. At what point did you think, I'm aging out of the effectiveness in being this ministry, and you handed it off to somebody else?
I had been doing student choirs for 13 years, and I got to the end of one of the trips, and I still did not know all the kids by name. So I'm like, I'm not keeping up with this. And so tweaked my role. I was right at about 40 years old, and hired our first associate person, first to do middle school choir, and eventually this person took over high school choir too, to where I was investing in those young guys. All of them are in ministry now, like as a lead worship pastor. They were coming in sort of as an associate type to learn under a safe environment. That's what Josh did. He came in straight out of college. He made a lot of dumb mistakes.
He was 22.
I'm not Josh, but I do make dumb mistakes.
Yeah, and then again, we had several student music guys. This is my student music guy. Well, Sarah is our student music guy now. And several years ago, we were, the guy had left, I mentioned Corey Stanley, he left, and I was looking for the next person, you know, to lead that ministry and to pour into. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna shut up here.
You're good.
Had a young guy in there, wonderful guy. He just wasn't the one. I looked at my wife and I was like, you know what? Sarah could do rings around this guy. It was an aha moment. I was like, oh, never had a girl. How about it? And she grew up there, was part of the culture, understood Johnson Ferry, great musician, great at personal relationships. Still had to sell that through student music, through student ministry, through a pastor, all those guys were supportive. Even the squeaky wheel that she was talking about. He went away now.
It all ended up being fun. I'll say two things on that. First of all, and back to the question of student ministry, I try hard to get their calendar at the beginning of the year. They were better at planning out the whole semester than I was because they're working with a larger group of people. So I would make sure to always plan my events that fit with their events and never competing. And then anything I could to coordinate was really, really helpful and showed them that I was considering them first, especially since I have a large group, but I'm pulling from an overall larger student ministry. And then on knowing when to turn things over, I will say, Mark is incredibly supportive. Besides me being his daughter, he has always gone on these trips as just a supporter to the student music person, to help with any crisis moments, to take that away from them so they can focus on the students. But he also continues to invest in the student. He may not know every student by name, but he goes on all of my trips still, and I gave him an out this year, so he doesn't have to anymore. But he and my mom will lead a group of 6 to 8 students and invest in them for the week. And as much as we joked about it earlier, being like Grandpa Mark, who's swiping his credit card, getting them all ice cream all the time, they really do love him, and they feel more connected with a 2-venue church that has modern and traditional, and most of them going to modern. They feel more comfortable when they come into traditional because they're like, oh, that's Mark and Bex. Like, we love them. So it's really that, I think, also helps. They do, because you get them free stuff. Yeah. you break all the rules.
Whatever it takes.
I don't know why I set them anyway. So we've got, like I said, we do Wednesday and Sunday rehearsals. And again, if you've worked with students, the technical music theory is not always a win with the large group as a whole. So I try and keep it as simple as possible. I do feel strongly that the guy before me in this role did not, in regards to sheet music. He just kind of would put lyrics on the screen and did more by rote. I still do a lot by rote because a lot of the students have never seen sheet music outside of student choir unless they're involved in band and chorus. I don't want the kids who are not involved in any other musical extracurriculars to feel like they can't be in student choir because they can't read the sheet music. But I also want to take the opportunity for them to learn, since they're not reading out of hymnals on Sunday, how to follow the notes up and down on the staff. So every once in a while, I'll put a chord chart in front of them for lyrics, but most of the time I'm getting my praise charts, SATB choir sheet version, and they are following along with that, while I'm also either doubling their part or have the piano. We try to keep it simple, but also teaching them when we can. And I think I've got this later on with the student involvement, but we actually will I've got an audition group of about 15 that are in the student ensemble for high school. And if we are working on a more challenging song, I will put the 3 of them on mics in the front of the room. It's especially helpful with our guys. That is where obviously I struggle. They cannot mimic me exactly when I'm trying to teach them. And so I'll work with those students, 5 or 10 minutes before, here are the parts we're going to cover. They sing on mics in the front, and then automatically the altos always can follow her. Might not be perfect. It's giving her leadership opportunity, and then they're able, when I'm here working with the sopranos, to still hear their part. We also use that student leadership team for devotions during rehearsals. Sometimes we'll go through a theme for the semester, and then in the spring we usually are going through each of our songs, and it's a 5-minute devotion, and they're taking, we're singing the song Christ Be Magnified. So let's look at the verses and see where scripture supports the songs that we've chosen and how we can connect with the meaning of the song. So they do great on that, but they also are my volunteer force. While I want adults in there in the room, the tasks of setting up the room and breaking down the room with music and all of that are not complicated, and my students love the opportunity to do that. And so once they've learned where I keep music and how I organize it, after every song they're going through it, picking it up and putting it away. And so I lean on them a lot in rehearsals. Again, this isn't, we're not trying to be school choir, but we're also not trying to be the senior adult choir. And so where's kind of the in-between of making the rehearsal student-friendly, but still, still productive? We do a lot of just goofy themed rehearsals. Students love a theme. They do this in high school all the time. They have spirit days on Fridays. And so if I ask them to dress up for a certain theme, most of the time they're all in with it. So we do a lot of just kind of silly stuff in rehearsal. We do play games, not necessarily every week, but especially in the fall when we're not working towards, a critical deadline of needing to know music, we'll incorporate those in. Two of my favorite ones are headphone karaoke and Finish the Lyric. Finish the Lyric is the most simple. I will play from my iPad up in the front the beginning of either a song that we're working on, or a pop song, or an oldies song, or something that they would know. And then when I stop it, they raise their hand, and the first one that I call on has to stand up and sing the remainder of the line. So it gets them singing.
Really
They think it's
brave,
fun.
too. I'm just like,
They're very brave. I don't think I would have done that in high school, but I throw out candy at them all the time. So I'm throwing out candy for the people who finish that correctly. And then headphone karaoke is another fun one that we used to play on bus trips, and I can, kind of brought that into rehearsal. But we plug in a set of headphones, the picture right down here on the right, to the iPad. They pick a song, and we turn the music in their ears up as loud as possible so they can't hear themselves, but we can hear them. And so they are singing along on the mic, and then we have a couple of them compete and vote. It's usually really silly and really goofy, and they sound pretty bad because they can't hear themselves, but it's just fun, and it's something that has something to do with music, and so we consider it a win. But they love that kind of stuff. They love prizes. We give away a lot of $5 gift cards and a lot of candy. The cell phone turn-in, like most great ideas, I cannot take credit for this. One of our adult leaders came up with this, but our students turn in their phone at the beginning of rehearsal voluntarily, and when they turn in their phone, we hand them a piece of candy. So they get candy immediately. We have their attention during rehearsal, and then at the end of rehearsal, I will pick one or more phones off of the piano, which sometimes annoys our pianist. She's a good sport, but there are times where the piano's vibrating up there because we've got everybody ringing at different times. But that doesn't happen as often. But I'll pick a phone or two and then give that person a prize. So they know that there's, like a $5 Starbucks card. And so they know there's a chance of them winning a prize. They're getting candy immediately for turning their phone in, and I get their attention for the hour that I have them. So that has been a real win.
yeah, participation in that's amazing.
It really is. Especially when football games are happening on Sunday afternoons. This is a real win for me, so that the boys aren't sitting in the back watching the Falcons. So sometimes they still do. They can. In terms of resources, again, a lot of this y'all may. First of all, is there any questions at this point? Or y'all have any comments?
Yeah, I got a question. You talked about whenever the choirs sing, though most of them go to the modern service, do they sing in the traditional?
They do.
Has there ever been an opportunity where they've sung in the modern service?
They do, yeah.
Yes.
So it looks different. When they're in the traditional service, a lot of the times we'll let our adult choir have the Sunday off, and so they'll fill up the choir loft, sing along with whatever the worship set is that morning, and then in our traditional service we still have special music, right before the sermon or so, and so we'll share one of the songs. I've got a video of that later on. And then in the modern service, since we don't really have this special music slot, they sing as a big worship choir behind our modern worship pastor. And so they're really comfortable with that because that's where they are on Sundays, but they love the opportunity to be, showcased more in the traditional service.
A lot of the music you use would be used in the modern service.
Yeah, a lot of the music is the same.
Where do you even get in that? I'm 62 years old. I did all the Dennis Allen musicals back in the 90s and all. This is way past that. The praise to really And sometimes Sarah will pick songs and I'm just like, can you figure that one out? It's hard for me to sing, but it works every time. You know, by the time they get around to May and June.
Eventually it works, yeah,
Yeah.
when we get to June.
Yeah.
So.
Finding, I think she's gifted in being able to find songs that really connect and the students really like.
And a lot of that, I ask my students what they're listening to. Obviously listen to as much radio as I can, talk with our modern worship pastor about what's working, and then one of our worship staff members is actually leads in students on Wednesday nights and on Sunday nights, and so we coordinate a lot as well on what the music is. It was funny, we just had a high school mission trip over spring break while I did our middle school choir tour in the same time, and he ended up picking a lot of the same music that I was already doing in choir. We had not coordinated, it just was a Holy Spirit thing, but we're getting all the credit for the high schoolers came to rehearsal and said, it's so great that you picked all the same choir music that Luke led us in Texas. And I said, yeah, that is so great that we did that. But I think we're both with the students enough to where we know kind of what's been working with them. I use a lot of praise charts. It drives our choral library person crazy because we're not buying the books anymore, and we're getting sheet music off praise charts. It tends to work well in terms of if we want to use multi-tracks with that. We don't always, but a lot of the time we can find multi-tracks there as well. We can find a chord chart version when our modern worship band joins with them, and we have an SATV piano vocal version for our accompanists to use. And if we are in the sanctuary traditional services, then we've got actual rhythm chart that our drummer and bass player and acoustic. So it really seems to be the best for us in terms of getting what we need orchestration wise and tracks, and it's still being accessible to.
You guys use praise chart for student choirs? Yeah.
So this is an example. I'll just show you. Lauren Daigle did a song a couple years ago called "Still Rolling Stones." It is a more it feels very choral, but honestly, the praise chart version just took it from the original MP3. So this is just a quick little clip of that. But this is from praise charts. You can also tell the strings in the background. We're using the multi-track in addition to a live band up there.
Out of the shadows, over the gallows, a dead man walking, to love him calling. Rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. 6 feet under, I thought he was over, and answered a prayer. The Lord's never Savior. Oh, rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up.
Every praise charts version of a song is fantastic. Sometimes the voicing can be really off, and so I end up flip-flopping the tenor line and the alto line. It's not consistent great arrangements. This was an awesome one, to where we just used it again last year because it was the girl on the left, it was her senior year, and so we brought it back so we could do it one more time. So sometimes it's a win, sometimes it's a challenge, but it ends up to be the most consistent for us. So this is another example of a praise charts version we use is Who You Say I Am.
You might say where that video is.
Yeah, and so this is just to show some contrast. This is in our traditional worship. The other video was our homecoming concert. It was an unusual Sunday where we had the whole stage in our modern worship. This is just a regular Sunday in our traditional worship where our students have taken over the choir loft. This is the special music section. We're doing another praise charts arrangement of Who You Say I Am, except this is no multi-tracks, and this is just piano, drums, bass, acoustic guitar, I think is what we had. And I think, honestly, the organ might have been playing along with this as well. I can't remember. The sun sets free, all is free and deep. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
I'm curious, the percentage of participants in choir versus those in the entire youth program.
Yeah. Like
What's the percentage, 20%?
we've got, on Sunday mornings, I don't know the actual percentages, we have about, we're probably running about 300 or so on Sunday mornings with the high school ministry and their life groups that they meet in, 250, 300. And then, their overall ministry, like if they're going on a mission trip, is around that amount, 9 through 12. And then we have for our high school, usually about 100. So I guess it's about a third.
It's a long way from 14 in 1987. It really, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So it's, so we do have a large program, but we're taking from a large student ministry. I don't want to put on any sort of facades that we've got, it's percentage-wise, we're still,
Sure.
so.
Other questions about what you see?
How many would you have in there that would say, you would say maybe are not confident singers, they're just there for the social aspect?
The majority.
Would you say the
Yeah,
majority?
I would. Yeah, we're doing solo auditions this week for our tour coming up the first week in June, and I'm noticing it's a lot of the same kids that are already in my audition ensemble that want to come and try out, and I'm excited when I get like 5 or 6 other kids that really feel confident to come and sing and aren't already a part of that group. And so it is a majority of kids that are not musical necessarily. They're just they're there to hang out with friends and enjoy the choir. They enjoy worship, but aren't necessarily musical.
What about monotones? I mean,
Lots of them.
Yeah, especially with the guys. I do struggle with that. I try to get a few key guys as best as I can, get them spread out throughout the group. I don't struggle as much with girls that are monotone. Most of these kids have come through our children's music program, so they have some foundation of matching pitch and rhythmic. It's a good basis of rhythm. It's so key.
That really is key, and it's foundational. And
Yeah.
for me, as the worship master, back when I first came, really the first person, the first associate. I mean, it's a big church, it's a big staff. I get that, but our first associate type person that we hired was a children's music person. So they all kind of come up through that program.
I'm glad to have the kids who are monotone and totally clueless about what's happening. It's very rare that any of them have come up preschool all the way through to me. It's usually kids that jumped in sophomore year and new to the church. So.
Really, if they're coming for the wrong reason, it doesn't matter to us at all.
Yeah.
But if they're there for just to be with a friend or because their girlfriend, so what? You got it. You got a chance at it. You don't have a chance at them if they don't come.
Ultimately, the hope, with all of this, is that there's some sort of discipleship opportunity. That the student who leaves this program will be closer to the Lord or understand what worship is a little bit more by the time they graduate. So if they're totally clueless, they're only coming because they have a crush on a girl in the soprano section, it's fine. It's totally fine. My prayer is always that they go on a trip, because that's really where the discipleship happens, where they're poured into every day by these family group leaders.
Other questions?
Are you using like those praise charts?
Yeah.
Is it SAB? Is it?
Yeah. So I almost always will use the SATB as the foundation of what I'm using. I typically am doing, have all the guys on the same part. If I'm working with my audition group of high schoolers, then we will do, full 4-part harmony, and sometimes we'll add in some other stuff. The boys have trouble standing on their own tenor and bass, and so what I found to be the best with this group, at least the one that I have right now, is that the guys are all singing the same part, even if it's in octaves, and they do okay with that. So, but I do purchase the SATB, and then I don't always put the guys on the melody. It tends to be where it lands, especially where a lot of our worship songs are right now. But I do keep them together. So I use Spotify a lot. It's just a personal preference of mine, not only for rehearsals. I run our rehearsals off of a Spotify playlist with an iPad that I have up there with me. I just feel like it's the easiest to navigate with playlists and all of that.
She drives me crazy with that.
I do, because he's an iTunes guy, and it's fine.
MP3,
Yeah. But it also, I think, there's so much trial and error. There's so many songs that I put in front of the kids that it don't work. And so Spotify is great if you pay for the Spotify Premium or for Apple Music. It works in the same way. To be able to try the song, and if it doesn't work, I haven't spent money on it. There's a subscription there. But it's also a great way that I find new music. They have that little feature the fans also like, and I can't tell you how many new random artists I found that, man, that actually was a huge hit with student choir, because there's something related to another artist. So I use Spotify a lot, and we have a church subscription, so that ends up.
Are there any other, I mean, are we missing anything, any sources where you guys find songs that work in student choirs? Or where do you find
Yeah, I mean, we've just typically over the years, we've really leaned on Dennis and Nate Allen's compilations that we've done, but also praise charts. I mean, it's really hard to find resources for student choirs. I know it's not brand new information for anybody, but it is.
Yeah.
And you're using praise charts for both middle school and high school?
Yep. Every once in a while, we'll find an arrangement to do with high school that's not praise charts. And I've got our set list printed up here just for y'all to take and use. I love to steal music from other churches, so please steal ideas. Like the Still Rolling Stones, I highly recommend. It's a great one. But for the most part, praise charts just tends to be the easiest.
So the things that she's doing with the high school ensemble, there's some more legit stuff in there.
Mhm.
She'll do some pentatonics thing or something.
They love
like that.
pentatonics. Yeah.
More meat on the bones.
I think if you're looking for some really simple stuff that's already compiled for you, like some of Dennis and Nate Allen's older stuff even has, they've got a collection, it's already SATB, and they've got accompaniment tracks already. Now they're not clicks, they're not stems, but they are accompaniment tracks that'll give you a nice full sound. If you're on a tour, just pop that on your laptop or CD player or whatever, and then you can get that big sound outside to help. And they've got vocals in there, so it's a split track, so if you need to supplement, when you need to supplement.
Oh, it's when.
Yeah.
Yes, we always.
Yes.
So you have students that play in the band as well, correct, in every tour?
You know, we don't for, they used to do that. I didn't like that it pulled them out of the choir. And so we do have, though, our band, for the middle school trip this past spring break, we had some of our college students that had grown up in it and played instruments that came back and played in the band, which is really helpful. But we take our, Bobby is our modern worship pastor, and he's super helpful on these trips, and he leads the band, but he'll play keys, and then he'll kind of pull together either some of our college students or interns to play for the rest of the band.
We do have student bands for student ministry, worship.
This is just a communication tool that we have used that I stole from one of our local high schools. And have you all used Remind.com? Yeah, it's great. So just a great way to get massive amounts of text out. I still feel like my individual text to a student makes so much more of a difference than this, which is annoying because I'd rather just send it this way than have to send out text on Saturday nights. But it's great just for reminders if you're trying to get them rehearsal-wise or registration or anything like that. And obviously social media is the best form of communication that we have found. As much as I appreciate Facebook and Twitter, our students really get most of their information from Instagram, and so I use that for rehearsal reminders and upcoming events. And I also find, and this is consistent, I think, kind of across the board, but it's happening a lot in my generation and younger, that they will check out the social media page before going to a restaurant or before going to a church or before going to an event. So it's helpful, if I can keep pictures and videos and, just stuff that's fun going on our social media, then hopefully our students are sharing it, but also new students are able to engage with us in that way.
I mean, who wouldn't want to come when you're having Waffle House thing?
I mean, waffle and a dog cone, that was a time. That was a fun game. That was literally throwing waffles across the room and trying to catch it in a dog cone.
So, with your branding, I see now you're calling it student music
Yes.
instead of choir. Yet still subheadings choir, like little tour information, but overall calling it student music. What all does that encompass other than the two choirs?
It's the 2 choirs and then the ensemble. So,
Ensemble.
yeah. it
Auditions
just-
for both groups?
No auditions for high school and middle school choir, but auditions for that ensemble.
Good.
because
And there's
they've
an
got
ensemble for
additional-
middle school and for high school?
There's not for middle school.
Okay.
Yeah. It was most consistent with our overall church ministry because JF Students is the high school ministry and the middle school ministry. So they have HSM high school ministry and MSM middle school ministry under the subheading of Johnson Berry Students. And so it's just trying to be consistent with the verbiage that they're already using. I'm not afraid of the word choir, but it's easier overall to just say student music. I lead student music. So.
And I think student is a little more modern than saying youth choir.
Yeah.
I think youth is a little bit dated
Mhm.
in today's culture and language. So
Yeah.
just say even student choir, student music, either of those.
And we held on to senior high until I came on
I
staff.
don't know why I did that.
I don't know why you did that
Yeah.
either. Yeah, because they're high school when they're not with us. They're just in high school. They're not in senior high school, and so we dropped that pretty quickly. But yeah, just verbiage that works for them.
Did you have a video of the ensemble team?
Yeah. So just in terms of kind of what our year looks like, we do our tours in the summer and in the spring. I'll get to that in a second. But we've started doing a fall mission, like a fall event for the high schoolers, just to kind of have something between August and Christmas that they're working towards. It's not a huge amount of time, but it keeps them engaged. And so we will actually reuse their favorite 3 songs from the summer tour, and then partner with one of our local ministries, do a little block party fall festival, share a short concert, and again, it gets the students engaged, and there's some way to
It's like a
serve.
one-day mission trip.
Yeah, it's just a 1-day thing. We'll go about 30 minutes away, a little closer into downtown Atlanta.
So do you have a kickoff event for both choirs?
We have a kickoff event in the fall, usually the Sunday and Wednesday after school starts. So that was all the waffle stuff you saw. We'll do waffles for high schoolers. We've gotten Waffle House to come in and cater literally just waffles. We're not asking for bacon and eggs and all the things. But we do a Waffle House kickoff for high school choir. And then for middle school, we'll do cupcakes or cookies or something like that. Some sort of food to entice them.
And you do games as part
Yeah.
of the mission.
Yeah, we'll do that in August. The middle school ministry, we have not done any sort of fall, or middle school choir, we haven't done any sort of fall event. They just kind of start prepping on Christmas. But they have a shorter rehearsal time on Wednesdays as well, so it's worked better for just high school. Yeah, so we call that Love for ATL, just
Other
Love Our
questions?
City. And I stole this, Prestonwood was doing this in the fall, and they did like in Austin. They would drive over to Austin for the day and just serve there and do the same songs. I'm like, we could do that. Like that's So it's been a great rhythm for us. And then you're asking about involvement in Sunday morning worship. That's our middle school choir in the sanctuary in our traditional worship. And of course, you saw the high school choir was kind of up in the loft. Middle school, we just kind of would throw up there on the front sometimes. It just depends on the week. They sang that whole first worship set with the choir, and then shared a song. And then you'll see high school choir on the left. That's a normal Sunday. And modern worship, where we have our band, we have our worship leaders, and then the kids have jumped in. It's like just the modern worship choir. They're just joining along with the worship set they already had. So we try and do that at least once a semester for both groups if we can. But it's also helpful because we have great worship pastors that are willing to give up part of the platform. So I will say with this too, and when it comes to student ministry, I try to get that info to our student ministry as early as possible. I made that mistake a couple times, if not, and it was difficult on their Sunday scheduling because we're taking a third of the group out of their life group time on Sunday morning, and they're coming in 20 minutes late. And so learned by mistake because that did not help their relationship. And so would touch base with them, hey, is this a good Sunday for me to have the middle school or the high school involved in worship? I'll get them there 20 minutes in, and I'll make sure that they know when they come in to come in quietly to go straight to their group. But it helps them with programming and just kind of keeping that bridge between the two ministries.
How often are they singing both groups in middle and high school? How is it?
I try to do once a semester if I can. In our post-COVID world, it has not been that regular, just because I'm kind of still getting back into the rhythm. But pre-COVID, we had both the middle school and high school singing in one of the services each semester. I usually would do, I think I did the traditional worship for high school in the fall, modern worship for middle school in the fall, and then flip-flopped into the spring. For Christmas, we've got a couple opportunities for them. We have a Christmas, we call it like Christmas packages. It's now called JF Christmas Party, but it's just a big kickoff to the year with our modern worship. And so the students are involved with that. And they also lead in the traditional worship for Christmas Eve. One of the Christmas Eve services, they take over the choir loft for adult choir. And Mark's great about giving them the opportunity in there. So they start working on that in September. A couple different songs for Christmas, which is why we do the big themes. You know, you get a prize if you wear the craziest Christmas outfit. We've had kids show up as full-on Christmas trees. It's any excuse to dress up, but it's just something to work towards in the fall.
Well, really having a target,
Yeah.
something very project-oriented.
Yes.
Can't come in September talking about choir tour. They don't even know what they're going to be doing this weekend, much less. So having, whether it be your love for ATL or doing a Christmas theme or some theme party or whatnot.
And I probably should have put this earlier, but our middle school choir tour does happen typically during April, but it's during their spring break at the same time that the high school ministry is going on their student mission trip. And then we flip-flop the first week of June, similar to y'all, and do the high school choir does their trip while the middle school ministry is taking their trip. And so we aren't always able to have, you know, like I'm not able to be on the student ministry trips and their staff isn't able to be on this trip, but we're at least coordinating with our dates so that families who have a middle school and a high schooler both have them out the same week and they can plan their vacations better throughout the summer.
I've been on choir tours, you know, where you go and sing in a different city every night, you know, stay in somebody's home or whatever. And really, the choir mission tours for both groups where you go and park in like college dorms or summer housing or whatnot, and invest in that city has worked best for us to have that mission component to it.
There's a Tim Keller quote that I share with the students often in regards to choir tour, but it's God directs his people not simply to worship, but to sing his praises before the nations. We are called not simply to communicate the gospel to non-believers, but we must also intentionally celebrate the gospel before them. And so that is ultimately what we're trying to do on choir tour, is to celebrate the gospel before the nations or our own nation, and we do that through worship. I'll go back to choir tour actually. I've got out there the objectives of choir tour, kind of why we're doing that. You'll see that it has like a little core value to the right, and that directly relates to our church and our core values. But you can see there just kind of why choir tours exist. I think I fell into my first few years the pattern of, well, we just do this because we've always done it, and so I sat down and was like, you know, we need to write down what the purpose of this is, how it aligns with the mission of the church, and why it's important in the life of our students. And so kind of went through, and you'll see, you know, on number 6 there, drawing students who may not be churchgoers or musical so they experience the power of Jesus on the mission field. A lot of the times, you know, we get a student that is, you know, their only friend at the church just happens to be in choir, so they end up coming to choir. That's their first connection with church, first connection with mission trip, and that is ultimately the way that they, you know, end up experiencing who Jesus is and making a decision for him. And so, while most of our students are the regular overachieving students that have chosen to also be a part of choir in addition to student ministry, there's always that chance to connect with that one student who's musical and quiet, and you know, the student ministry is too big and overwhelms them, but you know, because they play bass clarinet and they're really good at reading music, they can really connect with the student choir.
What complications for the April trip, realizing all your schools are not out at the same time?
Most of them are. We're fortunate in that way. Even our private schools pretty much connect. So I think because Cobb County across the board has the same spring break. I know Marietta High School sometimes has some variety, but it pretty much has always worked. So.
I didn't get your commissioners to come talk to me.
I know, and I didn't realize that wasn't the case with all counties, but we're very fortunate, because they're spread out between maybe 6 high schools are represented, on a Sunday afternoon when I've got them all there, but they all have the same schedule.
Your Covina County schools have different weeks.
Well, it's just the fact of your private schools. I have 7 high schools represented. So,
Private schools are all
Yes.
over.
They do their own thing, huh? Yeah, yeah.
Ours, the city schools and county schools.
exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll end together, often they don't.
And I know for a lot of churches, you know, just another example with Prestonwood, they do their high school trip in July, and that works for them. It would never work in our context, because our kids do a lot of traveling, and so we capture them right when they get out of school, that first week of June, and then some of those kids I won't see again until August. But you know, if your schedules don't all work with the same, you know,
We
same
tried to do
travel
that in the
schedule.
early days, and like you said, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Our tour built on momentum. It's not like you just come in July, let's go. I mean, if it's a student ministry trip, let's get on the bus and go. The prep kind of ramps up to departure. And having
And I
so
know-
close to the end of school is important.
Yeah, I know, I think this is correct, that Hunter Street, would do like a big extended weekend with their middle school choir. Like maybe they would take like a Friday, Monday, depending on school schedule. I know they've done that before, or with at least with middle school mission trips. So it just depends on what works for your context. But spring break has been a rhythm for mission trips at Johnson Ferry since the early 90s. So they're used to something happening every spring.
The value of those trips, though, we can't underscore it enough. The kids that were in choir 15 years ago, man, that's what they remember. I remember when we were in New York.
Stories.
That was the best trip ever.
We've found with our middle schoolers, we do partner with you know, a variety of local partners in the city that we go to. We try and keep that a driving trip. It's just easier with middle schoolers, not get them on a plane. But with our high schoolers, we've really connected with church planters. That has been such a win. Really exciting, actually. For the first time this summer, the student who actually was singing that solo on Still Rolling Stone, she's a musical theater major now at the University of Alabama, and she is going back to New York for the summer and is an intern with one of the church planters that we had partnered with on a mission trip. And it's going to do some auditioning and some singing and stuff like that, but her first taste of New York was ministry, and so she's aligning that with her career goals, which is like the biggest win ever. Like that's what you want to see. And so the church planting thing, we'll send groups out, you know, they'll take a family group of 6 to 8, and we'll do whatever's helpful for them for the week. So whether that's passing out flyers or picking up trash, all in the name of their church, working in a local elementary school, doing a reading program, whatever we can do. And then we do block party concerts with those, and we'll again do that in the name of the church. So we'll partner with the city, do a park festival, have a concert, have that church planter step up and say, I'm Redemption Church, I'm here in the neighborhood, we're meeting at the elementary school on Sundays, we'd love to see you. That's been great for our students to connect with what missions can look like stateside.
Really, full disclosure, our global ministries area is really strong, really active, very supportive. It's not.
And they do.
They partner
majority
with
of that,
us on the missions activities, really everything, programming, helping with all that.
Yeah, that's definitely not only, for sure.
I'm
Any questions
looking at-
about that? I realize we just kind of breezed over choir tours, but
So I think it's a
Or
real
anything you'll have to
it's a
add?
real
Yeah.
motivator.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have choir tour, we would lose a lot of appeal for our students. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
big carrot.
totally.
Do anything, you guys still do a polar bear run? I mean, we've done the polar bear run as a fundraiser.
We stopped doing the polar bear run because in our community we got so run saturated.
Is that right?
that it declined for years and years, and so we actually stopped, and we went to we stopped doing fundraisers. We went to one just big offering that we just called the Send
Nice.
offering, and so we did with choir tours and like 2 other trips. We just asked, instead of going back to the church for fundraiser after fundraiser after fundraiser, we just said, look, we're just going to come at you one time. Here's our goal. It's whatever it is, $40,000. And it's gonna go to this trip, in this camp, and we're gonna be done with it. And
We're really the only ministry that does a fundraiser. We started doing the Polar Bear Road Race to help the kids offset their costs of going these trails. That's been helpful. I'd rather do something like that when you get more bang for your buck rather than car washes and standing in the corner selling.
well, that's what we were doing. Polar Bear Run was one of the things. We did that, and then we did turn in an envelope with the amount on the front,
Yeah.
and then a spaghetti dinner, and then a poinsettia, and then
Yeah.
and it's like we're breaking our necks trying to keep track of
Selling
it.
Krispy
Right.
Kreme donuts.
Selling Krispy Kreme donuts,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like, okay, it's just enough. Our people, we're
Running
getting
some
tired.
gift cards is a big fundraiser.
I will say our Polar Bear Run is still happening. It's way less people than it used to because, you know, things like the Hot Chocolate Run came to Atlanta, and I mean, yeah. So we used to, when he was doing the Polar Bear back in the '90s, even like I would say, you probably had
We did
close-
usually 2,000.
yeah, which we're running like 1,500 will come and run that race, which is
Still a big race.
Still a big
Yeah.
race.
So yeah, it's a 5K we do the students volunteer at, and every hour that they volunteer, we take the overall cost, like overall money that comes in from runners and from sponsors and all of that, and divide it up for the students based on how many hours they worked. So if they worked, you know, a total of 6 hours towards the race or on race day, then this year it worked out they earned $12 an hour, and so all of that money is coming off of their trip. So it's them and their parents working that race. And again, that's something I 100% inherited from him.
We've done the Polar Bear Run a long time. And
Yeah.
there's a buddy of mine, college buddy of mine, who used to be at this church where Carter is. He stole one.
He did?
We stole my logo.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, we got your logo and everything.
Yeah.
The Polar Bear Run West.
That's right.
That's right. Kind of watching our clock here, what questions would you guys have about, whether it be literature, or choir mission tours, or how we get from here to there, you know. It really is, it's not about me, it's not about Sarah. Certainly we've got the right people driving the bus over here to my left. But God's done a special thing there for sure. Go from 14 in October to, we've got about 100 registered so far for the choir tour.
I think I've really been impressed with your choir's energy and platform presence. Is that something that you practice? I mean, I know you're naturally gifted in that too, but
I act like a fool up there trying to get them to like emote some of the times, and it is sometimes dependent. I mean, quite honestly, on their situation. You saw that they were a little bit more subdued when they were leading in the traditional worship than they were when they were leading their homecoming concert coming off the trip. And they're teenagers, and so you know they do kind of base sometimes off the energy that they're getting. But I think it does help them learning the background of the song, what it is they're saying, and trying to remind them as much as I can that we need to be a thermostat and not a thermometer. And so we're setting the temperature in the room and not taking the temperature in the room. I say that all the time to them. So it, you know, they also feed off of each other. And so if I can put my energetic students in the front on a mic and the other students see them, a lot of times they'll mimic what they're seeing. And so it's a lot of that and a lot of me jumping around, stomping my feet, trying to get them to do something. So
is your student leadership team different than your ensemble, or are they the
It's-
same?
yeah,
So
there's
that's two different
sometimes one or
groups.
two students that overlaps, but I try to intentionally make it a different group. They sign the same contract of commitment to leadership and abstaining from X, Y, and Z, and here's our core values as a church, and which sounds really serious. It's really just it's one of their first opportunities to lead in that capacity, and so I'm like, if I'm going to give you the name of leader or put you up on the platform, I want to know that you know your expectations. It's good conversations about that, but I try for the student leadership team to be the kids who are really involved and plugged in, but they're never singing. Like they're not the kids that are the most musically talented. A lot of times I make that a guy-heavy group too, because they help to recruit as the foundation. And it's easier to recruit girls for choir than it is guys for choir, quite honestly, as teenagers. And so if I can get the right guys, and if they are, you know, in a good place spiritually and with their peers, put them into a leadership position, then that is a great buy-in for a 9th grader seeing a cool 12th grade basketball player who's bought into student choir.
The information that you have, that they sign as far as the core values and so forth, is Is that something you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, do you have the full choir, do they sign any kind of commitments?
They don't. They don't. No, we do register for them for the choir so that they can check in and we keep track of them, attendance wise and all of that, but they're not signing a commitment. The ensemble and the student leadership team, as a part of that commitment form, they commit to choir tour. So I know that I've got that foundation of students as well, which I have no trouble with because sometimes there's a conflict and sometimes there's a family thing, but they know when they're signing it that they're committing to that first week of June as well.
Hey, I think we're out of time. Thanks for letting us share with you guys. Love student music there at Johnson Ferry. This is what works at our address. And it might not work next year at our address. We've got to adjust and figure it out.
So other than Sarah, what is percentage that now you have leaving as adults that came up through music
That's a good
program?
question.
Say it again now.
Other than Sarah, what percentage do you have of those that have come through the music program now as adults?
In my choir or
Yes.
stuff like that.
Choir.
I don't know about percentage. Definitely have people there. You
Yes.
stay there long enough, and then you get lots of different ages there. It's really cool though there's such a tradition now through the student choir. A lot of adults, young adults, have kids that are involved in the choirs. And it's a priority for them because they have such a great experience themselves. And they want their kids to experience that also. Any other questions before we log out of here?
Just one last one.
Yeah,
On
yeah.
choir tour, when sometimes if we have a destination like New York,
Yeah.
people out of the woodworks.
Yes.
Did y'all have to establish some sort of attendance policy?
We do.
What
Yeah.
was that?
And I actually
How
told
did
the
you-
kid yesterday that she couldn't come, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But you have to, at some point, stick to the attendance policy. So I typically start that in January, and I say 80% of rehearsals from January until June. The leadership team, I tell them it's like 85%, so it's like 1 or 2 less rehearsals. I am strict on it, but if there's a student situation or a family thing, I'm super flexible. So if a student comes to me one-on-one, they're offered a whole lot more grace than what the students as a whole know of the policy, if that makes sense. So. But yeah, especially after our spring break mission trip, they're all really fired up about going on trips and being together. And so I
They're
get a
real
ton of them
spiritual.
at the end of April. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like we're already in the middle of this. We've already registered, we've already booked flights. So anyway.
You say average cost for a trip like that?
This is another one of those things that we're super fortunate that our global missions team helps a lot. We had a trip to Birmingham, which is a pretty inexpensive trip for us that we took our middle schoolers on over spring break, and the total trip cost for a student was $225, which means that the actual trip cost was $450 because our global missions team takes half of the cost off
Every
for our
mission,
students.
and this, again, it's just a unique thing.
Yeah.
It encourages short-term mission opportunities across the board. But every mission trip at Johnson Ferry, they're gonna pay 50% of their costs. Like our adult choir and orchestra team went to Romania a couple of times. That was like, probably $3,500 trip. They paid $1,600 to do that. Helps the participation for sure.
But we include like the t-shirt cost and every food cost and all of that kind of stuff. So that $450 is everything that the student needed for that week. Yeah, lodging, buses, everything. So.
You still doing trips to Poland? I know you used to do that like every.
Yeah, we've delayed our Poland trip the last 2 years, but we are hoping to go next year. We've got a partnership with a church in Poland and are able to do these concerts and stuff in high schools, local high schools, which is a really cool connection. So, and students come out of the woodwork literally for that trip. So,
I'll still, I won't shut up after this. Not about the numbers, but it is about the numbers, because more kids reached equals, more impact. But the 2020, the year of the pandemic started, Sarah had 165 students registered to go to Poland. And we had to call that trip off. It's like,
I cried a lot, as all of us did during COVID.
But,
Yeah.
headed back in that direction. I think we're done. Thanks so much.
I've got my card